It is Tuesday. RawMikeRichards.com broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, out of the Pacific Junction Hotel 234, King Street East. NFL free agent frenzy, Dave. It's a frenzy. Actually, it's kind of crazy. We've got some news on potential signings, players being moved around, and of substantial names, too. And, of course, the quarterback carousel still continues to spin around. Therefore, we're going to talk to Brad Gagnon. Notice how I said that.
You said it correctly. That's what you said.
Brad Gagnon from Yahoo Sports Bleachers. He is the national NFL writer
for the Bleacher Report.
For the Bleacher Report.
Yep.
And he does a great job, by the way. He's really good. And so we'll talk to him today on where he thinks the carousel might stop. But maybe rather than saying it's a carousel, might want to say it's a domino effect, Dave. And once they kind of go over, then other teams see who's falling into what place. So I guess those still waiting for Kirk Cousins, even though it is believed it would be Minnesota. And if he goes to Minnesota, I really like their chances.
Love their chances
of winning a Super Bowl. Going to be very interesting.
You know what's interesting about Cousins too? Before we get more into it a little bit later on, is now that the Broncos look like they've kind of subsided ways with Kirk Cousins, the Arizona Cardinals appear to be in the mix. So, Cardinals could be looking at acquiring or signing Kirk Cousins. We'll have to see, but nonetheless. You see something out there?
I hate the Cardinals. That's one of those teams, like, kind of like Seattle for me. They're not our friends. By the way,
I'm better. Do we got
I think that parking guy be coming on in. So I need, we don't have race music.
No.
We need, we need like some sort of, because I saw that white car go through. We can't see our cars this morning, as you know.
Yeah.
It's like a game show. So we try to.
Yeah, and we win all the time.
Yeah, we win like. Yeah, literally. I think
It's like when you were kids and you were watching The Price is Right, and you always got the right price, and you'd always win the car, and you'd always win at Plenko, even though you weren't physically dropping the Plenko chips. That is us.
Yeah, we're
going to beat those car monitor losers.
So this is going to cost me $265 today.
Ooh, I don't like that.
That's where I'm living. That's a hit.
So
that's a bet.
You saw them. You saw them go that way.
I saw a white car and they take a left, so I don't know if they're going around. So today. I'm hoping, because we can't even see my car from here. This is very interesting for people listening, but we're just trying to beat the system.
No.
We're trying to beat the man, yo.
Yeah, and we usually do.
Yeah, that was, I'm Eminem now. Okay, so let's talk about that, the merry-go-round, which is right now, or dominoes, however you want to put it. But right now, it would appear, and I'm not really that surprised if it turns out this way, but if Drew Brees stays in New Orleans, because you have to remember there's a huge emotional tie there, Dave, and very few guys I know that have put what they have into that market and into that team. Like he's really the modern day version of what Archie Manning was to New Orleans in its day.
Big time.
So the fact that if indeed he's going to stay on, I'm not surprised at all.
No, I'm not surprised either, just because he's kind of a monument in that city itself. You know what? The one thing that's funny for me, and I'm just going to kind of play devil's advocate here a little bit. If the Vikings are interested in signing Kirk Cousins for some serious cake, which would probably be at least $25 to $30 million, why wouldn't you throw a ridiculous offer to Drew Brees if you're the Minnesota Viking and say, you know what, Drew? 2 years, $70 million.
Wow. You know what I do with $70 million? Oh, my God.
So you're like 35 a season, which would be like $8 million more, well, $7 million more than the highest paid quarterback in the league, and you'd be on the Minnesota Vikings on a small commitment level of 2 years. Lots for the franchise, but it's only a 2-year commitment, and you got Drew Brees. Now, is Drew Brees moving his family up to Minnesota for 2 years?
No.
That's a thing.
No. Now, and here's the other thing, too. If the money's going to be similar, are you taking Drew Brees for a couple of years, or do you think you get Kirk Cousins for, like, well, if he stays healthy, that's 4 or 5 years probably?
Well, Kirk Cousins for 4 or 5 years is over $100 million, right? Because Kirk Cousins will cost you minimum, I'm going to say minimum $26 million a season.
I think anywhere 25 plus, closer to 30 is going to be in that ballpark.
I think it's going to surpass the highest paid quarterback number. And who would have thought Kirk Cousins is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL than some of the other ones that we've talked about throughout the years.
Well, if he went to Minnesota.
Is that important? You want me to take over the show?
You
sure?
Sunnybrook Hospital. I think they're just probably talking about my next
okay.
entering. When they enter me next. That's fun. There's something for the show, kids.
I'm just saying.
It's one of those things. The hospital phones, and I can't turn this music off. It won't stop. Seriously.
Let's just go with it the whole show then.
I got it.
It's not the worst music in the world.
No, I like it. Just okay. I've just X'd it out, and it is.
The band is in your computer play. Oh, there we go.
The reason why I wanted to do that.
Tell me more.
It's not because I don't love the music, but can you imagine though if you were a Vikings fan, and you found out that Drew Brees was going to be your guy?
Massive.
I know what reaction I'd have. It'd be similar to Paul Stanley.
True. On
the Kiss Alive album, the first one, at the end of Firehouse. That would be my reaction as a Vikings fan. Here it comes. Not a siren.
Oh, so good. Best front man in music.
I know what people are saying. You went that far and that long.
Yes.
Just for that.
That was worth it,
and
too.
I did. So shut up.
Firehouse! Woo! Sorry.
Can you imagine the sound guy
for
Kiss going, why does he have to scream all the time?
I was going to say exactly.
Turn his pot down. Turn it down. Guy's always screaming.
And
what's with the screaming and the rock and roll?
And his technical team is probably guys like us that have lost most of their hearing, and they love the music, and they're just pumping, and all of a sudden it's scaring them instead. You know, he does it every single show. You shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, those guys go home, and the wife goes, "Hi, honey, could you pass the milk?"
What? You're a MILF?
It's so
true.
Imagine, and the way they used to tour too. Like now, it's like, you know, casual Fridays every once in a while here and there. They used to do these spot shows, especially last summer, which was cool, where they'd actually go to a destination once a week, and then they fly back home.
Yeah.
They'd go to Toronto, come back home. Go to, I don't know, New York City. Well, mind you, that's in their backyard basically, but they're out of LA. Go to Denver, come home.
Yeah.
It's like before, it used to be they'd go 7 days a week, sometimes 8 if you could do a concert twice in a day. And Kiss had a habit of making some cash.
With Gene, they're going to make that cash, and they're going to see some ladies. That's kind of how that works.
Yes.
Gene Simmons is one of the few guys that got more girls in evil clown makeup than when he took it off. He did better with the makeup on, but he is Gene Simmons. He's a god. We love him. So everyone just shut up. Speaking of shutting up, boy, I'll tell you, if you're waiting for that domino to fall to see where all the quarterbacks are going, I'm taking a look at the New York Giants, or sorry, the Jets rather. Not the Giants are going to have their issues too, depending on what they do. Who is the quarterback right now for the Jets?
Well, right now they have Bryce Petty under contract, and,
yes,
and Christian Hackenberg under contract.
Yes.
I know. So they're searching. That's why they're in the Cousins sweepstakes, which appears to be underdogs in that category. Don't be surprised if Josh McCown actually finds his way back to New York, because he's definitely plan B or C, maybe D. He had a nice season actually, despite the Jets and what they did. I think because when you look at what the Jets did last year, they overachieved in my eyes. Like I didn't think they were going to win as many games as they should have.
I'm sure every Jet fan's going, "What are you doing winning?"
Completely. And that's what they did. And it was a lot of it was Josh McCown. He broke his hand at the end of the year. They end up losing out, which was great. So now they have the number 6 pick. Number 6 may not get you what you want. So maybe there's a caretaker quarterback in place if Kirk Cousins doesn't work out, and it is Josh McCown returning.
There are guys, quite frankly, that you use the term serviceable.
Yes.
Or in some cases, depending on who's coming next, a stopgap guy. I think that Sam Bradford, if he's going to be put into a category, that's the only one I'm putting him into. Mm-hmm. If you're expecting more or some sort of playoff run or a championship, I think you're delusional. Not that his numbers when he plays are that bad. And quite honestly, if you're looking at like probably completion percentage and stuff like that, it's actually probably very good. But he has been on the sidelines or on the IR for half of the career that he's had. If you're paying for Sam Bradford, you're also paying a guy who's not going to play half the season. That's just the way it is. So if you're a team like, I don't know, Buffalo, would you take Sam Bradford for a year? Well, you can see that they're trying to trade up to get a higher draft pick. Maybe he would be a guy for a year if Buffalo wants to go that way, because obviously they're going to have to. They really right now don't have even a stopgap measure with Taylor going to Cleveland. But for the Jets, it seems like for years we've been talking about who that next guy is going to be. Well, to go back into the Mike Richards archives, when Tim Tebow, he felt that he'd put in the time. Russell, do you know what we're doing here? Tim Tebow's going to be coming up.
I wish he would have given them more of a chance, though. They never really gave him a chance.
He didn't, and it was just so weird at this point because I wasn't sure if he could throw. Because he tucked the ball and run. And there was a time where we thought,
which is funny coming from a guy that is an NCAA Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
we're not sure if he could throw.
Now there are guys who said, in the day, I've talked to guys who were DBs, in the SEC, and saying, well, when he'd throw like a corner route or a corner pattern, he threw the corner ball as good as anybody else, just really never did it in that system. So he thought at this time, going back into the Ron Mike Richards archives, when he called us and he thought with all the players going down, Mark Sanchez, that this would be the week that Tim Tebow starts.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's
Is this
Tim Tebow calling?
Hey, Tim. How's it going?
I'd like to clarify a couple things, if I could.
Yeah.
Just because I know there's a lot of misinformation going on, and I really, hope you all understand. But I just want to clear the air a little bit because.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Anyway, Mark Sanchez tries his best. He's a good person. I know he's a good person. I've seen him. We've had sleepovers and pillow fights and chippy popcorn. We've made Jello together. So I know him. And he's solid. He really is.
Well.
And I think if he's not going to play and I have to step in, I have to step up my game, and I'm really excited about that, and I'm excited to participate for the team, and so I'm looking forward to the next game against San Diego.
But you're not playing.
I'm sorry, who's what?
McElroy's starting.
McElroy's playing?
Yeah, Rex Ryan just announced it.
Oh, me!
Oh,
mother!
oh!
I tried all this time, and that why?
Him!
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, God. I'm so sorry. Oh, what happened there? Woo!
Yeah, wow.
Ooh, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Hey, could you play Popcorn by Hot Butter? Thanks. I'm so excited about that.
All right.
There you go. That was Tim Tebow from all that time.
Yeah.
You can tell very
well, you know what? You caught him off guard, though. I mean.
And he caught us.
That's true. That's true. Very true.
It's very, very strong. Okay, here's something we're going to talk to at the bottom of it's the bottom of the hour. Sorry, used to doing it. But probably in about, 10 minutes' time, we're going to talk to Brad Gagnon from the Bleacher Report. He's their national NFL writer. Dominican Sue, cut.
Yes.
And there's a guy that it's so strange to describe what his career is. In some ways, you describe it as a guy who is addicted to the violence of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
He might be one of the strongest guys who have ever played the sport, but it's trying to keep him on the rails. So if you're paying money for a guy who is like that, it's always been a little 50-50. Then I also look at guys who win. Now, not that a guy in that position single-handedly, if I'm looking at Detroit, so he's been in, I believe, 2, 3 playoff games, and obviously they're Detroit, so they didn't win them, and that's not to pin it that's his fault. But you really roll the dice on a guy that you're really quite unsure. Once that ball is snapped, his ability to crush human beings and his want for the violence of the game, and trust me, in football, that's not a bad thing. It's not like I'm sitting here crapping on the guy. I'm not. But it's the mental stability of being able to keep that and focus that in the best football sense, Dave. I don't know if he's ever really quite been able to contain it, because when he gets a penalty or when he gets suspended, it's for bad stuff.
It is. I know. And he almost goes over the top on most situations. Like, we know about the stomp. And when you're a defensive tackle, your cleats are probably this big. You can do some serious damage. And
the size of that mountain?
Yeah, exactly. When you're holding up 300 bills on those cleats, it's there's a thing in his head that clicks the wrong way with Sue. We'll see. I think he'll get some sort of contract somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
He's still a serviceable player. He is getting older, and Mike, and when you're a defensive tackle and you've been in the league and the mileage is kind of going high on the abdometer, you know what? It's going to be a short-term deal with a winning franchise, so we'll have to see what he does.
Because I still think in the world of football, a guy that brings that much, and he's the one guy that you're actually afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
No pro's going to tell you that. But there is a fear factor to that guy being on the other side of the line. Now, I go back to this game. So Colt McCoy was the quarterback at Texas. They're playing Nebraska in Nebraska. Now, this is going back a couple of years, obviously, when he played. But this is also going back to where Texas and Nebraska were big-time football factories. The last couple of years, neither of them have been at the top of that mountain. They just haven't been. Those programs, in fact, I hear people talking about being almost certainly in Nebraska after poor Mike Riley's tenure, which was really almost disastrous how it ended. People even judging whether that's a great place to pick up and get that job. So this goes back a ways. But what it does show, number one, listen to the intensity, just the way this is. So there's no play-by-play, which I love. So this is right kind of field level, Dave. You're looking at Colt McCoy, and on the other side of the line is a young, very angry Ndamukong Suh, whose number one job is to wipe you out. Listen to the crowd noise. Look at the intensity in which that game is played. And I would say property of NCAA, probably we're looking at, I'm going to say NCAA maybe. But watch the intensity and the sound of the crowd and how little time you actually do have to react in what is big-time football. Once again, this is Colt McCoy running for his life from a Nebraskan Ndamukong Suh. But just the intensity of that noise itself, and he's got less than probably 3.5, 4 seconds, if he's got that, to get away with it. This is really quite extraordinary footage, I think. You're getting hit after you throw it. You're getting hit all day. You are running for your life. And at this time, Colt McCoy was kind of a star at this point.
Big-time star, college star.
Yeah, you want to be a quarterback? That's kind of what you're looking at. Unbelievable, and this goes on and on and on. The intense, and again, I think sometimes we're sitting at home, we're watching college ball with our buddies, wagering a little bit. You got your sports interaction going. You're doing it on your phone. You kind of forget what it's like for a human being to be playing that position when that kind of physical threat is coming to you. I'm trying to think of which Fox guy I talked to.
See, a lot of people forget too, like Sue was the second overall pick.
Oh, he was, there's some guys coming out of school where, and Clowney had that sort of reputation too, coming out of college.
Before him, Sam Bradford was drafted that year. And Sam Bradford was a hot shot, sexy quarterback that a lot of people thought, hey, this is going to be the next superstar in the NFL. And a lot of times, it goes with the position, right? So Sue very well could have been number one, considering that the talent he had. 5-time Pro Bowl. He's 31 years old. We'll see what happens. But that's he was. When you see videos like that, He was highly sought after right from day one, as far as the NFL watching his games and wanting them to bring him into their programs.
You knew what kind of guy you're getting, and like I said, is it worth money in the NFL to have a guy that other guys are afraid of? It's very rare.
Yep.
Because this is the most violent sport, really, and certainly in North America, that we have, and you want guys who actually do that. Now, so we're going to get a hold of Brian Gagnon here. Hopefully, this thing. This is not Skype anymore. This is something that actually works. It works. But if we're taking a look at last night, Dave, in the NHL.
Yes.
Well, what happened between all the talk between the Capitals?
Yep.
And your Jets. What happened last night? Dave? What happened?
Well, okay, so Ovechkin scores 2 goals. Laine scores 1 goal. That's a story as far as the Rocket Richard's concerned. I didn't like one of the goals. The first goal that Ovechkin scored was a little bit of a tip in front of the net on a skate, so it really wasn't the greatest of goals. But you know what? The Jets are playing game number 5 of a 2-week road trip, so it's starting to pile on. I'm happy they got the point because Connor Hellerbuck was amazingly great last night. I know that they're in Nashville tonight, and as much as I hate saying this, I wouldn't bet on the Jets tonight playing a back-to-back, and you're playing the best team in the NHL in Nashville, well-rested after their trip. They haven't played since the weekend, so they've been waiting for the Jets the entire time. Michael Hutchison likely to start for the Jets in a backup role because of the back-to-backs, and we'll have to see from there, Mike. So all in all, take the 1 point. They've gotten 7 out of 10 points so far during this trip, which is decent, but Nashville is a very, very good team.
Well, I'm just having a charming time with this. It's not even.
I can tell by that laugh.
I'll tell you, I really enjoy this kind of stuff.
Do you want me to go to the out-of-town scoreboard while Rusty gives me the single and he comes over to break your computer with you?
What is this? Who invented this shit?
Okay, let's do this. Rusty, get over here. Okay, here we go. So, yesterday Washington wins 3-2 in overtime. They pick up the 2 points. Big for them because they're battling in the Metropolitan Division with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Other scores, not really of significance. The Rangers double up on Carolina 6-3. Rangers aren't really out of it, but kind of out of it if you look at it. Vegas wins again, 3-2 in Philadelphia. Marc-Andre Fleury wins his 400th game of his career. Yes, Marc-Andre Fleury headed to the Hall of Fame. You can bank on that. Columbus 5-2 winners over the Montreal Canadiens. Ottawa upsets Florida 5-3. Ottawa, I don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing either.
But they're and Florida needing points, and they screw up like that. Come on. Anyway, let's go to Gagnon right away.
From the Bleacher Report, as we're going to talk a little NFL, as free agency is in full bloom right now. Hello.
Hello.
I'm looking for Brad Gagnon. It's Mike Richards
This
calling.
is him.
There we go. And once again, I'll tell you what, Brad, thanks for joining us here this morning. Of course, Brad Gagnon is the national NFL writer for the Bleacher Report. And I guess, you got a lot to write about because this thing is unlike other years where, maybe there weren't that many key players. Maybe it wasn't that kind of year contractually where players were, sort of tied to it. This year is just, I've been describing it sort of like a carousel or a domino effect because once they start to fall, this thing is going to be literally, the NHL talks about a free agent frenzy. This actually is a frenzy, Brad.
Yeah, particularly obviously at the quarterback position. And that's what makes this year so unique is that it's really the first time since Peyton Manning, and I guess that was 2012, that we've had a superstar or a star quarterback, a franchise caliber quarterback, elite quarterback, whatever term you want to use, on the market. Really, they just don't get to the market. And Manning was an exception because Andrew Luck came in and he was coming off the lost season due to the shoulder. And so even that was exceptional. And he was in his mid to late 30s at that point in time. Kirk Cousins is a 30-year-old quarterback coming off 3 solid seasons in a row. He was in the Pro Bowl a year ago. Case Keenum is a 30-year-old quarterback coming off a breakout season in which he was the 6th highest rated passer in the NFL. Teddy Bridgewater's on the market, and he's only a year removed from a Pro Bowl, or 2 years removed from a Pro Bowl season. Only 25. Could come back from that knee injury and make a huge impact in his career. You got Sam Bradford. You got A.J. McCarron. Drew Brees. Don't forget about Drew Brees. Probably not going anywhere, but he's technically still unsigned with 1 day to go until the new league year officially kicks off. So you just got those quarterbacks alone, and you've got one of the more intriguing and more unique free agency periods lined up that we've ever had in the NFL.
Hey, Brad, speaking of Drew Brees, and you're right, he is technically a free agent, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, he's not going to be. He's staying with the Saints. If you're the Minnesota Vikings and you're ponying up some pretty heavy cash for a Kirk Cousins, would you maybe take this a step further and say, offer Drew Brees the 2-year deal and give him like $70 million, give him 35 a season, give him something that he actually has to think about, considering that window of NFL opportunity is so very short. And if you could lure this Hall of Famer up to Minnesota on a short-term deal, do you consider that if you're the Minnesota Vikings? I'm not saying Brees will sit there and say, yeah, sign me up, because he doesn't seem like that type of guy, but do you at least offer that at him, give him something to think about?
I would think so. I mean, there was talk, I guess it was probably about a month ago, of the Cleveland Browns when they had like $120 million in salary cap space, just saying, you know what, we're giving Drew Brees a 1-year, $60 million deal.
Yeah.
And that's only half of your cap space, and New Orleans obviously can't do that. No one else in football can do that. And obviously in Cleveland's case, Brees probably takes 60 over 1 year, but even in Cleveland's case, like, they're not going to win the Super Bowl, even with Drew Brees very likely next season. But Minnesota, they can't do 1 year 60, or they can't do 2 years 80 or something like that. But they could probably give him $35 million a year for a couple of years and guarantee it. And he's probably on a team that's as big a contender as the Saints are. I mean, Minnesota just beat the Saints in the playoffs, and Drew Brees is playing on the other team. So, you think that would be a temptation. It's something they'd probably do and may have done in the last 24 hours. Which has probably sent Tom Condon and Drew Brees back to the Saints saying, listen, you got to up your offer. We've got a higher offer elsewhere. But the word is that he and his wife don't want to leave New Orleans. The guy is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, I would imagine, or at least will be by the time all things are said and done. So even $5 or $10 million might not be enough for him to move from New Orleans and Minnesota. This might be more so just a power play, a leverage play than anything else.
Well, I take a look at Kirk Cousins. We know he's the pretty girl at the dance right now. But as you know, in the NFL, sometimes that can be fleeting, depending on, it's what you did you do for me yesterday. So if I'm looking at Kirk Cousins, and I'll be honest, Brad, sometimes I have a real perspective on what I think a guy can do on any given team in terms of his athletic ability, in terms of his leadership, his sort of his poise on the field. I generally have a pretty good idea on quarterbacks. With Kirk Cousins, there are some elements of that I understand. But do I really believe that of all those people available, and of course, again, if we're putting him at the top of that list, I know what Drew Brees does. So let's forget about that the previous answer that you just gave. Am I feeling better about Kirk Cousins or Drew Brees if I'm a Vikings fan? Who do I think is going to win? Who would I have more faith in if it was between those two guys? And something tells me, if it's just me, and we're talking about short term, right? I'm not talking about 5 years down the road. Next year, I think I would want Drew Brees. And again, this is blue sky stuff. This isn't real logistics, because I don't know necessarily if I truly know what Kirk Cousins not only brings to the Vikings, but any other team he should go to. How good is he?
Yeah, I agree. That's a valid question, and I think it actually opens up the debate not only Cousins versus Brees, but Cousins versus the perceived next guys on the list. The Denver Broncos are giving $18 to $20 million a year to Case Keenum, who had better statistics in 2017 than Drew Brees did, and was a higher rated passer, than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was a guy who kind of fell back to earth in 2017. The whole question, what have you done for me lately? Case Keenum has a better answer to that question. They're the same age, and he's coming off a much higher rated season where he helped the Vikings get to the NFC Championship game. Whereas you look at Cousins, he had the big breakout year with a triple-digit passer rating, the highest completion percentage in football, and over 4,100 yards in his first full season as a starter in 2015. Followed that up with a Pro Bowl in 2016, but his numbers fell off a bit. And then this past season, his passer rating drops again, completion percentage drops again, interception rate, the highest of his career as a starter. yards per attempt average, the lowest of his career as a starter. The interesting thing that happened there is Washington dealt with more injuries in 2017 than it had in 2015 or 2016. Also didn't have Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon anymore. They lost them in free agency. And so you look at that and you think, yeah, maybe he doesn't translate as well to other teams as we thought. He had a heck of a lot of support those first 2 years as a starter in Washington. Great receiving core, one of the best offensive lines in football, solid defense, good offensive scheme. Of course, he was overseen by Sean McVay, who became, the coach of the year now in Los Angeles in 2017. McVay leaves. They lose a bunch of weapons. The offensive line gets hit by injuries, and all of a sudden Kirk Cousins is average in 2017. That is a legitimate concern. And so I wonder if he's not even as far removed and worth that much more than some of the other guys on the market, like a Case Keenum or even potentially a high-ceiling guy like a Teddy Bridgewater or an A.J. McCarron.
When you look at Case Keenum, and you're right, the Broncos are on the verge, at least that's the reports we're hearing, of signing him. Is Case Keenum for real, or are we looking at Mike Glennon 2.0?
That's the big question with him. The difference between Cousins and Keenum is that Cousins at least has 3 years under his belt as a starter. Case Keenum is a guy who was a career backup, signed late in March last year to be a third stringer in Minnesota for, I believe it was $3 million. He's not a guy who was, even coming into his career was perceived as a guy who could become the dude, but he's got 3 things going for him. His best season, his only great season was in 2017. So again, what have you done for me lately? He's 30 years old. He's in his prime, and that's rare at the quarterback position. And just the fact that he plays the quarterback position in general makes him a high value free agent target. The question will be, is he Kurt Warner? Is he Joe Theismann, Warren Moon, a guy? Those guys came from the CFL, but Kurt Warner, a guy who came from nothing, and at the age of 30 exploded. And Rich Gannon, a guy who wasn't good until he was in his 30s.
Yes.
Jeff Garcia, Steve Young even. I mean, is he one of those guys? Is that what we're looking at here? Or is he just, there's examples of guys like Eric Kramer and the Danny Whites of the world who had a good year or two out of nowhere midway through their careers, but never were anything special after that and were never special before that. And so that's the risk the Broncos or whoever ends up signing them are going to be taking by giving $18 to $20 million a year to a guy who we just don't know because we've only got the 1 year sample.
We're in conversation with Brad Gagnon from the Bleacher Report here on rawmike.com, brought to you by DKI Canada. I see Sammy Watkins. Looks like it. Has he already signed the deal with the Chiefs? Is that in the books? Is that official?
Well, it'll be official probably the moment free agency officially happens.
Right.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, they've all locked these things in, but they can't officially do it until tomorrow. But it looks like it's $16 million a year for Sammy Watkins, which makes him one of the 5 highest paid receivers in football. Rather incredible considering that it's his 3rd team in 3 years, considering that, his numbers have never jumped off the page. He's never really fully delivered on a lot of his potential, but he's still only 24 years of age. He's going to join an offense where he's not going to be forced to have the pressure of being the centerpiece. He's going to team up with Tyreek Hill, team up with Travis Kelce. Obviously, they've got Kareem Hunt in the backfield. They've got Patrick Mahomes who can throw the ball 130 yards in the air. I mean, you've got everything you want in KC. I mean, I'm worried about the defense, but $16 million seems like a lot of cash to give a guy who might not even be the number 1 option, especially for a team like the Chiefs that doesn't have a ton of salary cap room. So they are really taking a chance here and rolling the dice. Allen Robinson signed with the Bears, or again, technically or not technically signed with the Bears, and that was only $14 million a year, $42 million over 3, and he's got a heck of a lot more under his belt than Watkins does. So that's where you look at some of these deals and you just wonder.
Yeah, you certainly do. As far as the Jets are concerned, the Jets are in the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes. I don't think they're the favorites in it. What is the next step for them? I know the plan B as a Jets fan that I am is always Josh McCown, because he did have a nice season with them this past year, outside of breaking his hand near the end. Is there another option outside of McCown for the New York Jets?
Well, I think if you're thinking long-term, because McCown's still short-term, and I don't think they're necessarily going to be too competitive in 2018, but they do have the money to become a lot better, and it's not as though they were slouches, even though everyone expected them to be that in 2017. So if we're talking short-term, yeah, maybe McCown's still the answer. Maybe it's a guy who could be kind of a high ceiling, become a starter, prove himself like an AJ McCarron or a Teddy Bridgewater. Those would be the most intriguing guys to me for the Jets. Instead of breaking the bank for Cousins, where you're probably going to have to outspend other suitors by a wide margin because Cousins is not going to be overly excited about joining a team that's not on the brink. Maybe you look at a Bridgewater who's going to be cheaper, who's going to, not command a long-term contract due to the fact that he's missed basically the last 2 years due to that knee injury. Only 25 years old. Obviously higher potential than maybe anyone else on the free agent market, but also as much downside in terms of his career maybe never being the same. Or McCarron, who has never been a starter, backed up Andy Dalton in Cincinnati, looked very good when he did it, and is seen as one of the best backups in the league, who's now an unrestricted free agent. One of those two guys, if you were to team him up with McCown, or even not bring back McCown, sign one of those guys, and then maybe you go to the draft, you look at Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, one of those guys, and you at least have sort of hedged. And I think that's the best way to do things if you're the Jets, is not to think short term, focus on long term. You're probably not dethroning the Patriots tomorrow, and so go with a guy who's got higher upside.
Well, Brad, the Bills, they've made that trade, so they're kind of moving up in the draft a little bit. But in terms of what they need to do at quarterback, would a Sam Bradford, or is that overpaying for a stopgap guy?
I think Sam Bradford would be overpaying for a stopgap guy. I think that would be, a team that is continually sort of, half measuring it, if you will, at the quarterback position would be doing that again. And I think that Sam Bradford is not putting you over the top any more than Tyrod Taylor was going to have a chance to put you over the top. I think the team, lost patience, obviously, when it benched Tyrod Taylor, despite being in a playoff position midway through the season. And even getting to the playoffs once obviously wasn't enough for them to regain any kind of confidence in him based on the fact that they've now traded him away. They're clearly trying to make up a move into that top 10 in the draft. They're now into the number 12 spot. They've got the draft pick ammunition to continue to climb potentially. And if they do that, I again think they're thinking a rookie. I think they're thinking of one of those big four, Baker Mayfield, Allen, Rosen, or Darnold. And if you maybe team him up with a guy who's got some veteran experience, again, one of those sort of secondary quarterbacks on the free agent market, whether it's McCarron or Bridgewater or a deeper guy, I think that's the best strategy if you're the Bills right now, rather than spending $22 million or 18, 20, $22 million on Sam Bradford, who, let's face it, you don't know if he can stay healthy. He's missed 3 of the last 5 seasons due to injury, or most of those seasons, and he's now on the wrong side of 30. I just don't think he's putting you over the top. So it's kind of a similar conundrum to the Jets, where the Patriots own that division. Why would you think short term? Think long term. Groom a guy. Have some patience, even though you don't want to, and wait this thing out a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we know that free agency officially opens tomorrow. So all these signings that we've heard about over the last 2 weeks are going to be officially brought forward. Out of all the ones that you've seen so far, and we're breaking down teams, what team has impressed you the most in free agency, in trades, in improving itself, that you'll sit there and say, you know what, might be a team that's taking, I'll take a flyer on them for a playoff spot. Is there somebody that sticks out? I have one in mind. I'll share it with you once you throw me yours.
That's a good question. The thing is that I like what the Browns have done, but that does the second part of your question, which is, does that put them in the line for, to be a surprise playoff team or anything like that? That's definitely not the case still. Yeah. But I do like what they've done in terms of finally being proactive about bringing in some veterans. Obviously, to have Jarvis Landry there as a safety valve for whoever is the quarterback, to have Tyrod Taylor as an option to play the quarterback position. I like those moves. Demarius Randall, they brought in from the Packers. That gives you another, experienced professional corner. Whether he can stay healthy or not is a question. But I like in general what they've done thus far. I do like what the Bills have done too. We just talked about that, the Tyrod Taylor situation. The other move they made, of course, just to move up to that number 12 pick, is to drop Cordy Glenn, who was, a so-so left tackle who hadn't really lived up to expectations as a first-round pick. Yep. And Deion Dawkins is probably a better option for them on the blind side. So you move him in, you get rid of Glenn, you move up to the number 12 spot. A Bills team that was already making some progress with a 9-7 season. Again, I don't think they're dethroning the Patriots, but a chance to get back to the playoffs, I think that has improved over the course of the last week. And depending on what they do at the quarterback position, could improve greatly still in the next few weeks to come. So that's probably the most impressive situations so far. The one other team that comes to mind is the Jaguars. going out and signing Andrew Norwell, who might be the best guard in football. They are already so stacked with talent, and to add a guy like that interior is phenomenal for them.
You know, you mentioned the four quarterbacks that are sort of the attraction when we're talking about that position. You talked about Rosen, Sam Darnold. You talked about Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. The interesting thing about them, Brad, is they all have an interesting little almost flaw in the armor. All of them, they're not perfect. It's not sort of like when Andrew Luck came out, it was like, okay, it's a generational guy. That was the feeling. But you look at Josh Rosen and his record, and he might be, I don't know if by perspective he's considered to be the best guy. I personally think because of intellectually, like that football IQ that he has, I like him at that position. I just think for Sam Darnold, for me personally, I don't think I would have hated for him to stay another year at SC, because I just think there's some issues there. I think maybe there's a shoulder issue, but it's the turnover ratio that I just didn't like. Now Josh Allen, I kind of cheer for just for this, his story is pretty cool, but you know he wasn't in the toughest conference, and I think you probably wanted to have a much better record, much better body of work if you're Josh Allen. And Baker Mayfield at 6'1" might be perceived to be a little bit under, and he's got a little bit, and maybe it's not his fault, but he keeps getting this stink about him about being Johnny Manziel-like. And he's like, I'm not Johnny Manziel. I don't know why people keep saying that. But, you know, there's some on-field, sort of off-field, and not to the degree, obviously, as Johnny Manziel, but he's trying to get away from the smaller guy, you know, sort of big attitude and ego, which I believe you need to have as a quarterback. But all four of them, Brad, seem to have something that you could argue is a downfall. So it's going to be interesting to see, as these guys move forward, getting drafted, what those teams see as sort of the big plus and what is the negative they're willing to overlook.
Yeah, that's what makes the top of this draft, or the first round of this draft, especially at the quarterback position, so intriguing this year. And it just kind of adds on to what the intrigue we have in free agency at the quarterback position. In that, I mean, you think of recent drafts, right? And you think that Andrew Luck draft even, and who ended up emerging as the best two quarterbacks, quite possibly Nick Foles, Russell Wilson, and Kirk Cousins. I mean, all three of them came out of that draft. One just won Super Bowl MVP. The other two are obviously the one's about to become the highest paid player in the game, and the other's already won a Super Bowl as well and is a solidified star as well. So that draft, you got Dak Prescott coming out of the middle rounds of his draft and becoming a star. Maybe there's a chance that Mason Rudolph or Lamar Jackson or one of those deeper guys, Mike White, out of Western Kentucky, becomes the best quarterback in this draft. Like, there's no guarantee those top 4 or 5 guys are going to become stars. And I do agree that Rosen has the fewest red flags. I think the idea of a red flag being someone who's opinionated about the environment and about politics to an extent is a very, very weak red flag, in my opinion. I think that the fact that a very cerebral position has a very cerebral player at it is a good thing. And I think he's going to have a great career. I think there's more football-related questions about Darnold and Allen. Obviously, Allen completing only 56% of his passes at Wyoming, of all places, is quite concerning. But you look at him throw the ball and you think, man, that's exactly what you want in a quarterback. And then, the turnovers for Darnold, that's concerning. It would have been nice to see him spend maybe one more season in college and solidify that he is a guy who can be relied upon a little bit more than that. And so, they all have question marks, and it does cause you to wonder if maybe we're overvaluing them at the top of the draft just because of those supply and demand dynamics at that position, but also if maybe Oklahoma State's Mason Rudolph or the huge question mark of the draft, Louisville's Lamar Jackson, could end up becoming the stars of this class. It's entirely possible.
You know, very often CFL fans are like, but what if he came up here? Well, and you know what? For a guy like Lamar Jackson, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the perspective of the scheme that you run as a franchise. Do you think it's a fit? Because sometimes there are those offensive coordinators in that league that don't see beyond a certain style of play. So if you don't fit into that, and I mean, you know, almost a square vision of what it is, you can be a fantastic athlete. They just won't see you as an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, and that stubbornness is a problem. I mean, that's something that the league has to get over. I think, teams that can adjust to their quarterback and complement their quarterback as best as possible, you can be successful. I think an NFL team can be successful with Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position if it's willing to work with Lamar Jackson and really take advantage of his ridiculous skill set. And And that's, that it takes also the not just being flexible, but also being smart and also being ahead of the curve. Like, he's the kind of guy who's going to need to have a good system and a good coaching staff and all the right pieces in place. You throw Lamar Jackson on the 2013 Cleveland Browns, a la Johnny Manziel, he's not going anywhere. It is about being in the right place at the right time as well. Whereas, a guy near the top, like a Josh Rosen, might not require as much, or Darnold, that might not require as much. But if you hit it right and you get the right fit for a guy like Lamar Jackson, you end up in a situation potentially where you have a player who can really kind of transform the position, and we've seen it in the past.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more on that point. Hey, Brad, thanks so much for joining us here this morning. It's always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you again, because this free agency is has been and is going to continue to be pretty exciting until it's over. And then, of course, we'll be talking about the draft, and I think there's going to be all kinds of action there too, depending on what's available. So we look forward to talking to you again.
It's going to be wild. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
That is Brian Gagnon from the Bleacher Report, who does just such an excellent job.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
I really enjoy when he's
one
on.
of my favorite guys.
And he makes the point that I always have, which is, and Hank Stram did it years ago. I mean, we're going way back, but Hank Stram said, well, why is it that some of those athletes that are so superlative at the college level, how come the offensive coordinators can't adapt to guys who have only won at every level they've played at? Because that's where the no fun league kind of brought out of that era of football back in the 80s. Because to watch smash mouth football all the time, where you're running that ball, where you got the hogs on the line and you're just jamming that ball in, you got a back that's going to get 3.3 yards per carry, and you just figure if you can keep hammering the ball, you burn the clock. As a football fan, that's kind of tough to watch. It's kind of tough to watch. I love seeing, look, one of the teams that I loved watching, if they're on television, I'm watching, that was the LA Rams.
Yep. See, that was the team I was going to talk to Brad about.
I love watching
as far as being the team that has done so much in the offseason as far as strengthening the defensive secondary, which was a little bit of a problem. The offense is going to have a little bit of a skip because of no Sammy Watkins. That's okay. That's easily replaceable.
They can find guys. Yeah, they can hit that.
They have the right quarterback. They have the stud running back. They already have a couple receivers in place, a couple young tight ends. This is a team that could be knocking on a conference championship door, and it could happen as early as this year.
Get me some stops. Get me one more stop that the other team gets, and I'm happy with it, because that's the kind of open football they play. I'm also going to be pleased if I do see a consistent performance out of the 49ers. I haven't enjoyed the fact, and I don't like – look, there is way too much middle ground in the NFL. If you weren't betting on it, if you weren't gambling on some of these games, I cannot see why you would spend 5 seconds watching some of this stuff, because it's painful. It's not really all that exciting. There are some – what Carson Wentz did before he went down in Philadelphia, and, of course, they end up winning a Super Bowl. But Carson Wentz, to me, was a great story, because we just talked about the 4 quarterbacks coming out. Could possibly some of those guys achieve what we've seen? So Jared Goff coming out of Cal.
Yeah, Jared Goff.
I saw his senior year. It wasn't that great. It wasn't that great. It's all about the timing of it. So he goes to and stays in Los Angeles, stays in the California area. And the first year is kind of A lot of people would say, well, Jeff Fisher was the head coach. He's got a head coach now who is a young guy and obviously offensive-minded. And all of a sudden, literally the same roster. And look at the difference. Because coaching, for the lack of a better term, coaching matters. And I think sometimes people don't see that. They just see the stark ability of superlative athletes on the field, on the ice, on the court, and go, well, what do they really got to do? It does make a difference. Steve Kerr makes a difference. Look at the team he's got in Golden State. Granted, but he still has made a difference. So I'm looking forward to this NFL season, teams being better, including, as you mentioned yesterday, I think it would be nice to see Cleveland not be a piece of garbage that sits in the basement all
Correct,
the time.
yeah.
Because I just don't.
Great.
Because you don't want to watch the game anymore.
Nope.
I'll be honest. Even so Baltimore. I'm going to watch Baltimore Cleveland. No, that's gun in my mouth time. That's the doubles of rye, the doubles, and they sneak up the triples.
Yeah, they sneak up. Yeah,
and the only way, Dave, I'm watching that game is if I've got action on it. I better have action on it, because there's no way I want to watch that game.
Yeah, because I like a competitive Cleveland Brown team. I know in the past they've been at times a little bit of cover machines. I'd like that to get into a level of you're no longer seeing Cleveland underdogs by 12, 13, 14 points.
The double-digit stuff has got to go.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. And I think the Cleveland Brown fans, that fan base that is very, very hungry for a decent football team, deserve a lot better than what they've had, especially in the last decade.
You're watching Raw Mike Richards on the website or the dedicated YouTube channel. We appreciate it as people continue to subscribe. So you see my little head there with DKI Canada, our title sponsor. Just click on that, subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of the shows or the promos that go out later on the day. Speaking of promos, hopefully you have seen that we're doing once again a bracket challenge. So it's the Raw Mike Richards Challenge. Cue the music. Think you can beat me? You think you can beat me? Well, give it a try.
Here's your chance.
Give it a try. So once again, we'll take a look at these brackets. As we know, obviously, after Selection Sunday, what we're looking at, you know that, of course, you've got the 4 regional number 1s. You've got Virginia. You've got Villanova. You've got Xavier. And who am I forgetting? Why am I drawing a blank? Who am I forgetting?
Xavier? Did you say Xavier?
Yeah, so Xavier, Villanova,
Virginia, and Kansas.
And Kansas. Okay, so after that, I will tell you that Wednesday morning, we are going to have our March Madness show. Will Strickland going to join us? Leo Roughton's going to give us a call, amongst some other surprise guests. But make sure, if you're watching this, or you see the link that goes out, you want to beat me, click on, join in the fun. It is the Raw Mike Richards Challenge. Really looking forward to it. And, of course, there's going to be some playing games. Oh, it's just gambling aplenty. How can that be wrong? What is it with this band never wants to stop?
I challenge you! Woo! You're in the firehouse, baby!
Let's see if we can make that work again. Okay, we can't play too much.
I was going to say, careful.
Here's the beginning. Only Paul Stanley. I remember this since I was like 12 years old, playing this album in my basement, faking the drums on cardboard boxes. The siren, the smoke, the blowing of the flames, blood coming out of Gene's mouth. Here we go.
So good.
Oh, it's so
They're
good.
probably going to be here in Toronto this summer. They have to.
We got to go.
They'll
You and I got to go.
I know.
You know who'd be funny to go with? Warren Sawku
Yeah.
and Scott Laughlin. Do you know Scotty?
I do know Scotty.
He is like a metal. Both those guys, metal historian, but
big time.
Because he speaks in a voice like this. And of course, I saw them with Sepultura and Tesla, 1978 tour. It was the Everyone Off the Bus tour. Also featured Vinny Rasmusso doing the sound.
That does.
He does. I'm gonna put that on. This is going out today. That's the group that I want to, because that would be hilarious. Actually, Jimmy Lang's part of the Kiss. Jimmy
Army.
Lang, Kiss Army. He's got a number. He's got a number. Absolutely. As we round out the show, we played some clips yesterday. What is this going on? Don't say a YouTube thing.
Nope.
Okay, forget it. God, you're annoying, YouTube.
Big time.
Annoying. Tiger Woods. You know what's really weird about Tiger? Is that I guess in some ways we have known them, or these athletes, these famous people. He's been on TV almost his whole life. Like even as a child, like I know the Merv Griffin thing I saw, which is kind of weird. But we're getting to an era where everyone's life is chronicled on video. I grew up in a time where unless you had Super 8, the old film, you really weren't seeing yourself as a kid. Now, from the day you were born, like my son, till now, everything is chronicled on video. But for Tiger Woods, it's just so weird to see him on, and this is weird. This is That's Incredible, a show with Fran Tarkenton, the great Fran Tarkenton. So he did the show. Tiger Woods is like 5, and he's on his knee. That's incredible. So it's property of ABC, probably was at Disney, ESPN, all those things. Here is a 5-year-old Tiger Woods.
Eldrick Tiger Woods. And Eldrick is an accomplished golfer. He wins tournaments on a regular basis and has shot close to par on 18-hole courses. Incredibly, Tiger here is only 5 years old.
What?
On the tee, we have the 9 o'clock starting group, the youngest contestant ever. He's 5 years old. Eldrick, Tiger, Woods.
Weird. What do we make of this now? Do you like that the
On a
5-year-old?
golf course, Tiger has the kind of poise and confidence that would be the envy of most golfers 10 times his age.
Weird. That's better than Russell.
His knowledge of the game is truly amazing.
Tiger has a overall concept of strategy right now. I pointed him down the left side of the fairway as an overall concept. Then he implemented that concept repeatedly right down the fairway. And as we approached the hole, which he had never played before, we made slight adjustments.
Okay, so there's the voice of his father, which obviously
Earl,
we know that Earl has been front and center of his. How do we feel about that, by the way? Was it okay the way that he was raised like that? Like Michelle Wee at that age group, having these parents putting them in, well, she'd go in guys tournaments, right? I mean, and then put him in very competitive situations at the earliest of ages. Here's one video that I also think is very telling about what it must have been like to be a young Tiger Eldrick Woods with the father Earl constantly. The word I would use is pushing him, trying him. Listen to the question. This is he's now a junior at the junior level, and he's winning everything. The reporter asks a question that is very odd to me because I don't know if I would ask it if I knew the answer, but maybe that's why he did it. And so listen to the question he asked about his dad and listen to the response from still a very young Tiger Woods.
Your dad also says that he's the guy who made you mentally tough. What did he do?
He played gamesmanship with me all the time. Tried to make me mad and see how I would handle it. And if I didn't handle it very good, he'd get even worse with it until I learned how to handle it.
And of course, your father, a former Green Beret. Now here we're watching you. I think this is, here's your tee shot off the fifth hole. You got a great swing for a 16-year-old. He said he knew you were an athlete when you were 4 months old because of the way you held a racket. When did you become a golfer? That's your dad there.
Put it to you this way. I can't remember back that far.
But listen to that. My father, with gamesmanship, used to try to get me upset so I would overcome my anger. Because in this day and age, if you were to say that now, so currently, 2018, and Russell is our son. Okay, that all aspects of that got
yeah,
incredibly creepy. But
yeah.
hey, 2018.
Sure.
All these things can happen.
We're a sitcom, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, Dave, and a boy. So
ABC's
yeah,
got it.
He's got it. He's our boy. Global's got it. Thursdays at 9. Dad, what's a girl? Shut up.
Russell.
But would you feel uncomfortable if you had people over for dinner and the daughter of someone who plays on Marissa, which is your daughter,
yep,
the T-ball team? What if you found out that in order to make her a better athlete at an elite level, that father was doing, as she would say, gamesmanship to make me mad on purpose so I could overcome my anger? What's your response to that in 2018?
See, I'm not.
I'll tell you what. It makes people uncomfortable. You're like Kathy Lee Gifford making Korean kids when they're 4 make shoes.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
You know what? If I'll say this though, first and foremost, it's all about the enjoyment and whether or not she wants to be part of it, and that's first and foremost. But if there's a reaction from her that once or twice a week isn't enough for her, I'm full on board. I'm full on board to make it 4 or 5 times a week. I'm full on board to play a lot more and kind of drive it a little bit more with her. But will I go to the same extent of, like he was talking about, my dad makes me angry to be mentally strong? I don't think that should be taught at that early of an age, because I know later on in your teenage years and in your early 20s, you start to develop, you start to mature as a person, and maybe that's more of a mindset that somebody at that age could grasp more than a 5, 6, 7-year-old. I'm not going to criticize anybody's parenting. Well, publicly I won't anyway. But
that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, a little bit.
That made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, a little bit. But I'm saying, you know what? If your kid wants to do something more than what he or she is doing right now, go for it. Like Marissa likes baseball.
Because let me tell you something. That reminds me when I hear stories of Todd Marinovich and his dad.
Yeah, it totally does. And that was read up on that, folks, because he's absolutely right. That's possible glory story turned tragically bad that's now recovering in his 40s and 50s.
Because I'm not so sure Tiger grew up a happy person.
No, I don't think so either. And I think we still see forms of it. And I think that once his dad did pass away, that a lot of this was crumbling and the foundation gave out and we saw exactly what happened. And now he's still trying to put it back together. He doesn't seem human at times and he's very mechanical, robot, computerized, whatever you want to call it with Tiger Woods. But I don't know.
But you use the word computerized because that really is programming. We're talking about programming your child to be this thing. So they'll go, okay, Mike, yeah, but fine, but he ended up being the greatest golfer in the world. Yeah, okay, that's one example.
Yeah.
But there are, I don't even know how many examples of those wanting to do the same thing. Well, we know what we talk about hockey parents. Don't get us started on that. And now with the sensitivities that we have with our children, sometimes they call it helicopter parents. But I just find that to be very interesting in just the echo of what his past was. It just sort of hits you sometimes as now we're talking about this sort of comeback, which I think is overblown because of the Valspar. I think it's way too much, way over the top about how competitive he's going to be now. Because I quite frankly think when you see that, the loss of his dad, the destruction of a marriage and a family, that he fights a lot of demons. Do you remember the apology after it came out, all the women from all the Denny's, all the hostesses, all the stuff that was going on? Do you remember the robotic, written out apology that he had that nobody liked?
Yeah, I know.
Because it just seemed like a spin. It seemed fake. But what has he got in terms of depth as a human being? How deep do we really think that Tiger Woods is as a pal? Do you think he's a fun friend?
No.
Because find me one. Nota Bigay.
Yeah.
Right? We talked to him. At that point, they had a lot in common because when they're at Stanford, they're the only guys of color and at Stanford at that time.
Correct.
If you're not on the football team, that would have stood out. So they were close. They were roommates. They've always been close. And
still are to this day, actually.
I think that's the one guy that really knows Eldrick Woods. I don't know if a lot of other people really
haven't been able to get that close, hasn't allowed people to get that close.
Including a caddy that then just goes out and writes a tell-all. By the way, he became a millionaire off of Tiger.
Which is brutal. To
me, I still think that's
I'm not a huge Tiger Woods fan, but I think that's garbage.
He made you a millionaire, and you wrote a book, just airing all the dirty garbage, everything you knew about him. I'm not.
That's like Russell in a couple of years writing a book about us.
Russell,
I'm just saying.
Russell, Russell's too busy, by the way, speaking French, as he told us. This is what we found out. That Russell, because I was going to play something today that shows Sidney Crosby speaking French. Now, obviously, when he was in Shattuck St. Mary's,
yep,
he played for the.
He played for Rimouski of the Quebec Major.
Yeah, so he's playing for Rimouski. So at some point, you better have some understanding of the French language. I think if you're playing there. So this is an old documentary. And it might have been from originally CBC. Here's one where it's done totally in French. It might be like Kojiko or something like that. Is it the Kojiko? Now he is saying all the words. Okay, he's speaking technically French. But when I hear him speak French, I often think if Russell were to speak French, it would probably sound a little like this.
Je suis très chanceux d'être là dans le vrai temps. C'est incroyable avec le gars qui joue ici. Beaucoup de talent, beaucoup de skill. Et le bongo aussi. C'est pas de clic dans l'équipe comme ça. C'est toujours beaucoup de fun avec le gars ici.
So there it is right there. But did he just say beaucoup de fun?
Yeah.
So a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Let's translate that. We can get Russell in here.
Russell, you said, yeah, I can speak French better than that. Can you? So now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, let's hear it.
We will end the show. I don't know what that was supposed to be. With Russell speaking the French, so I would say, Russell, what do I want to say? Comment allez-vous? That's the formal. Comment allez-vous?
Yeah.
Comment allez-vous?
Come on, Frenchie.
That's your response, Mr. French?
It's rough. It's been a while.
This is terrible. This isn't French at all.
Okay, I'm just going to say ça va. Ça va?
Très bien. Et vous?
Très, très bien.
Oui, oui.
Okay, translate this sentence for me, okay? You ready? The Maple Leafs have recalled forward Andreas Janssen from the Toronto Marlies. In addition, Calle Rosen has been recalled on an emergency basis. That's breaking news from the Maple Leafs this morning at practice. They face the Dallas Stars tomorrow. Russell, you're on the clock. Go.
French.
Le Maple Leaf de Toronto est, I don't know the word for recalled.
Recall.
Recall. That's good.
Andreas Janssen et Calle Rosen. Yeah, no, it's not coming to me.
You know, for a second there,
you had it.
I don't know.
You know those first three words when you said Maple Leaf to Toronto? I thought we had something.
Yeah, I thought I was in Montreal for a second.
We thought we were in the firehouse! Woo!
We just become best friends.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oui, ça va bien.
We'll do karate in the garage. Yep.
Merci beaucoup, mesdames et messieurs, de la suite dans le hockey, mon ami de suite dans tes sueurs. Hello and welcome. Bienvenue de Michel Richard, David Bastel et roast beef. Oh, yeah. Come on. That was good, though. We got to do an interview with Sid. And I go, it's got to be in French, though, because I just love when you say that. Beaucoup de fun de hockey. Oh, come on. Tomorrow, who do we got tomorrow?
Got Will Strickland and friends.
Oh, of course. Tomorrow is the March Madness show. Leo Routen's going to join us, and make sure you sign up for the Raw Mike Richards Challenge. It is a Bracken Challenge of the universe.
Do it.
Yeah, do it.